Welcome back, everybody. It is the Repurposed Podcast with Aaron, Hendon, and Chris Angel. Hello.
What up? Are you ready to mumble?
Are you ready to mumble? we are just writing stuff out on an iPad here, and because we started our community last week. It's officially launched. Congratulations, Aaron.
Thank
you.
The
Repurposed community met, and we are starting a series called the Mumble Phase. Little context on that, right? Like your life's work, your purpose, the impact you want to make through your business at some level beyond GCI, there is a figuring out what it is. There's a mumbling, I mean, maybe you should set up how you got to mumbling, but there's a mumbling you have to do with it before it gets pretty clear.
Yeah. Let's just the context for the mumbling thing. There was a interview with John Mayer, and he didn't talk about mumbling particularly in that interview. And I can't find where he did, but I know other singer-songwriters, and the way they invent their songs is, they got to get some music together and then they just start to mumble sounds until the sounds turn into words, and then the words start to put together into, stanzas and choruses. And that's, it's a wild notion it's not a wild notion if you've ever created anything, because that is the space of creativity. That you've got a blank slate and you're beginning to put stuff on it to see what it looks like, sounds like, feels like, and moving it around. And you're just dealing with sounds in songwriting. So we were talking about, we love the name the Mumble Phase, because it's it's that space in the beginning of something where you're unclear. And it's a place where it's a bottleneck in the process for people in determining their legacy, their purpose, their fundamental reason for being. We found this in the group, and we find this in life, that people are hesitant. In general, people are hesitant to talk, speak until they have a fully formed idea, as opposed to the way things work.
Right.
Actually work in reality is you don't get a full formed idea.
Yeah.
You don't get anything full formed without talking.
Yeah. Right. Which is why I think last week, even in the podcast, we said, this is maybe we didn't say it in the podcast yet, but this whole podcast for 9 months has been a mumbling of what this is, what our vision is for an industry, or a way to use our real estate businesses to make an impact beyond GCI.
Yes, is that willingness to play with it over and 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 over, and see where it goes and see where it wants to go. And this is okay. So I'm now going to connect John Mayer to my favorite conversation, which is the Grateful Dead, which if you are familiar with any of this, John now plays with the Dead. And I often think about how, because you either get the Dead or you don't, right? It's either your thing or it's not, and it's fine. But every now and then I get friends that are interested in what you can hear about it. Anyway, I fancy myself as someone who could explain it to people. And I like saying that, I fancy myself. And I always think listening to the Dead is like analogous to Harold and the Purple Crayon. Remember that story as a kid?
I love it. Yeah, I love that story. Yeah.
And he's just got a crayon and he just goes for a goddamn walk. And he sees what he sees and he draws what he draws. And it's just there. It's just emerging. It's a phenomenon that's emerging. And and if you listen to the band, if you listen to that particular band, it's or any jam band, I suppose, it's going. So no one knows where it's going. It's just taking something for a walk. You're just taking the thing for a walk and seeing where it wants to go. And in this realm of ideas, and what we've been doing for 9 months is we're taking an idea that real estate could be a source of leadership and a difference being made in the world, that realtors have a difference they could make given their place in the community. And we've been taking that idea for a walk. We're like Harold the Purple Crayon. We're just going for a walk, seeing where the crayon wants to go and what gets drawn, what we see when we get there. And that's how you do it. You have to see what you see when you get there, and you can't see what you're going to see till you get there.
Yeah.
And you got to be willing to do whatever it takes to get there. And you don't know what it's going to take. So just take the next step. That's why it always freaks me out. It doesn't freak me out. It's not the right word, but it bugs me when I encounter people that are specifically resistant to making the wrong move. You know, like they just are paralyzed because they don't know what choice to make.
Yeah. Right.
By the way, I married someone like this. So, you know, it's been 25 fabulous years, truly. But that's the one, you know, it is definitely a lesson for me. It's my teacher. Because, you know, there are no wrong. Miles Davis said it. There are no wrong choices. You know, there just are no wrong choices. You do what you do, and then you see what you see from when you did that, and then you're going to do something else.
Yeah.
There's no wrong choices. You can't make the wrong choice. You're going to make the next choice. And then from there, you're going to make the next choice. And from there, you're going to make the next choice. So that's the mumbling. What does it sound like now? What does it sound like now? What does it sound like now? And you got to be willing to risk not understanding it fully.
Right.
To work it out so that you could come to some understanding.
I do think there's some scaffolding to put around this. I think there's in a world of lots of ideas, right? Like I could be mumbling 20 different ideas and that creates chaos, right? Like there is something about, and I think that's where I think when I think about the community and where I want this, where I could see the series going and sort of seeing what shows up in the conversation is when you have a process for mumbling. Like I went, as we were thinking about the series for our community, I was like, what has been my process for mumbling? Because I've failed forward for 20 years in business. I definitely mumble. I mumble a lot with ideas. And over time, I feel like I found some things that work for me. And I think having a process allows you to pick something to mumble that is more aligned with what you say your life is for than just mumble with anything. In the beginning, you'd have to mumble with anything because you don't know what your life is for. But the longer you live and the more you start to get access to it, you know, the more I think you can bring a process alongside to help you stay aligned with the ideas you mumble. You went, your eyes went to the heavens. So what about,
I want to hear what you said, because I'm just thinking about, so we went from, if you're mumbling with too many things, I just want to get what you said. So what I'm hearing is if you mumble with too many things. So by the way, this is what mumbling looks like when you do it with two people. Just literally for everyone. This is literally what we're talking about. Chris said something and I need to get, you know, I want to hear it, and so that I can get it, and Chris will get clarity in my getting it.
Yeah,
that's what's happening here. This is what it looks like, right? Because Chris didn't have that thought really until he said it to me just now. So there's a pitfall, or there's let's just say a pitfall with too many ideas, too many mumbling, too many different things. Right.
Yeah, I mean, back it out even to the whole hypothesis of this community is that, you know, your life you're building a cathedral to honor something that feels good to honor, right? But that's hard to nail down. There's a million different ways you could mumble with something, and the problem with mumbling is it takes time. And so 20 years of mumbling later, and you're like, what the fuck do I have to show for all the mumbling I've done? Like you could really go down a rabbit hole.
Chris, it's really good. So that's the workshop, the True North workshop that we do, is scaffolding around that, is a way, is a structure inside which the mumbling, you spit out some idea, North Star,
some true north, some,
and then that becomes an idea that you then put inside this process. Then you're like, still not. And that's what we were saying, that the idea, play, marinate, integrate, and we think execution or implementation fits in 4 as well. That those are iterative, that for example, the workshop. So what I'm hearing, Chris, and tell me if this is what you meant. You go into our workshop or whatever, but let's just say the True North workshop. and you come out, you actually find an idea in that conversation and you play with it for the hour that we're doing it, look over the 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And there's not very much marinating time there, but you come out and now you have something, you actually have an idea that there is now, you go in your life and you play with it and you marinate and then you begin to implement. And those three things are happening.
Yeah.
Like in a tumbler, like you're playing, marinating, and implementing a little bit to see what it looks like.
Yeah.
That's part of playing. That's part of marinating, is that you can't just think about it. You actually have to integrate it somehow into your day to day. That's part of it. And given that that workshop becomes a useful structure, this podcast is a structure for it. The group is a structure for it, but finding a community in which you can play with those ideas is a structure, because otherwise you really are left with
it's too
much blank space, right? It's like it's Cheesecake Factory. It's like
right. Yeah.
Need this many choices. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
I just not useful.
Yeah. Especially when it comes to your life and your important work and what you feel like you want, what impact you want to make. So inside of that, then to say, okay, let's say what the impact I want to make is agency, right? I believe that the world will change when people have agency. So at least there's a true north. But now inside that, what's that?
At least there's some idea.
There's some idea. Now inside of that idea, you're like, well, which idea about creating agency for people do I follow? Shit, there's like, how many different ways could I build a container to help people experience agency? God, there's like unlimited. It's Harold and the Purple Crayon. Like you're going to walk through the pages of the book called Agency, and you're going to draw what you see about agency. Right.
And then it becomes, and then Chris, this is good, because this is where then we get to, add on the opportunity of niching down, of focus, of pick an avenue. First-time home buyers for me inside my business, right? There's a pathway, there's an avenue, and if I stay focused to that, then on one hand, then the smaller the laser beam, the more powerful it is in terms of doing it, because you can't, oh God, I was talking to someone the other day, just because you can do anything doesn't mean you can do everything.
Right. Yeah.
Just because anything is possible, it doesn't mean you can do everything. Pick something. And you can't pick the wrong thing. That goes back to that. It's not like you can pick the wrong thing. You're going to pick the next thing.
Yes. But again, then that just comes back to, there's no wrong choice in that. Whatever you pick, you're going to learn something. So in that way, there's no wrong choice. But you could pick something completely out of alignment for what you say your true north is. So you say, oh, buyer, I'm going to, buyer's agency, but first-time home buyers or something like that. But if you did first-time home buyers as I've seen this happen so many times, we go do the work of real estate outside of the thing we really want to say to the world. So if you don't bring the bigger conversation of agency, people feeling empowered to choose their own life and do what they want with their life, and you just help a first-time home buyer buy a home, it's a missed. In other words, the idea to Mumble here is, how do I bring this thing of people experiencing agency outside of a transaction into this transaction?
Right.
Mumble with that. That's the thing to mumble with.
Or it's a thing to mumble with. I mean, that's true. That's I hear you. I think that's accurate. And but it's not the only thing to mumble with. And it's if you didn't come to that, right, you just wouldn't have come to that one yet.
Right.
I don't know.
Of course, I get it.
Yeah, you can.
You don't know what you don't know until, you gotta pick something. But as you get clearer and you explore contrast, pretty soon you start to go, this is my true north. And then you go, this is kind of the impact I want to make. And I'm going to mumble with how to bring that impact into my life and my business. And then you're going to try some things. You have an idea for how to do it. You're going to play with it, marinate on it.
Integrate it. Play with some things.
Yep. And then you're going to be like, oh, I have a new idea for how I think that could go better.
That's right. And you'll find that you begin to narrow it down. You begin to focus more and more on what, as you play with things, some things will get eliminated. Some things will rise up.
Right.
That natural process. And then in the creative process, the painting will be complete. And there'll be time to do a new painting. There'll be a time to play a new song, to write a new song, and the next song, and the next song.
Yeah.
But I mean, I love that Judd Apatow quote that you have to give yourself permission to suck.
Mm-hmm.
You get something on paper, you get something down, you get something written, you get something painted, you get something said.
Yep.
Right. Yep. And then you have something that you can correct.
Yeah.
You have something you can play with. But until
dude, I just want to say on that, from where I sit, that's exactly what community's role is. Like the way that I see community is the place, the jam session, to mumble with others who are, working it out.
Yeah. And the perfect. Exactly. And the enemy of mumble is right. What people claim is perfectionism. That's what you hear people talk about.
Yeah.
Right. Is I'm a perfectionist. I don't want to do it right. Which really is just fear.
Yeah.
Of getting it wrong. It's not really a perfectionism thing, because if you were really a perfectionist, you would get it on paper imperfectly and then perfect the damn thing. Right. I mean, that's the way that would work, right? If you were really a perfectionist, it wouldn't be, I'm not going to put it on paper till it's perfect, because that's madness. That there's literally nothing that's ever worked that way. Yeah. That'd be like Michelangelo. I'm not picking up the hammer or the chisel until Michael comes out of the marble.
Right. Or like when you talk about learning to walk, I'm a perfectionist. I'm not going to start walking until I know how to walk.
I'm sorry.
The perfect walker was the one who got up and failed forward,
And Usain Bolt didn't become Usain Bolt by running that fast the first time he ran.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
You always do that. So
I love that.
Yeah. So to be able to name that for what it is, right? The enemy of the mumble phase is, that fear of performance, that fear of failure, that fear of looking dumb, right? That is inherent in all human beings. No one's special. If you're listening to this, I want you to be assured your fear of failure doesn't make you special. You don't have a special fear of failure that I don't have.
Right. All right. Yeah.
You don't have more imposter syndrome than me. You just don't. No one does. Right. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. It's good. I love that.
Yes. Yeah. And so it's good. I love it. Are you ready to mumble? Are
you ready to mumble?
Yes, I think this is our book. I think this is.
That's great. I love that.
I love it.
I love it. I'll just, for those listening, we kind of dropped you into the process that we have. I have it written down here. If you're listening, obviously you can't see it, but the process that we had written down was, one, when you have there's an idea that may spark for you that's inspired by either something cool or something painful, right? There's an idea. You're like, I want my life to be for X, or I really want to do this. And that thing that you want to do, that idea comes from inspiration or frustration. From there, you go, okay, I want to play with this further. For me, I will go play with it by journaling about it, whiteboarding it. I'll read books about it, articles. I'll try to get different angles on what it is so I can kind of relate to it. Like, what is this thing I stumbled into? Then the third sort of thing I tend to do is marinate in it. I will let it lie fallow. I'll step away and just let it sit. Because in my past, I took action very quickly about things and got, first you make the choice, then the choice makes you. Like I would choose.
You got to say that. You got to say that again.
At first you make the choice.
I've never heard that.
Yeah. First you make a choice. Like I'm going to marry my wife. Yeah. And then the choice makes you. Like all the things that come with the choice, fucking, go to work on you.
Did you just say fucking?
Yeah.
Come on, baby. I feel like I won something for having you start to be the reason we have explicit language.
I've dropped some F-bombs here and there. Not as much.
You don't put the explicit in the title anymore, though, do you? I think you stopped doing that.
No. It's the whole show is marked explicit, and every episode I just mark explicit because I can't keep track of how many. Anyway, first you make the choice.
And the choice makes you.
Then the choice makes you, which just means to me, like, there's so much extra work underneath a decision.
Yes.
Okay. So I let it marinate because I don't want to make a choice and then get, a year down and be like, it's my own, we call it a comfort zone, or maybe it's even wise. I don't know, but I feel like I get to a place now where like, I want to know that it feels congruent to me and I see how to move forward before I allocate resources to it. And once I feel like, okay, and one of the litmus tests for me is it keeps pinging me. It won't leave me alone. The idea, it's like, hey, it keeps coming back to me. And if you like the woo-woo conversation of, partnership with the divine, to me, that's kind of, I think, where that comes in. It's like, it just keeps chirping. Hey, don't forget about this. Hey. And then I'm like, okay, it keeps coming back. Then step 4 for me is just, after I've marinated, is to integrate it. How do I integrate this in a way that works for me and not, because what I used to do is I'd go to the class, whatever class it was, the person would say to do it their way. And then I'd abandon all the things I was doing to go do it their way. So a little lived experience, a little wisdom in living. You go, okay, I know my true north. How does this idea integrate with my true north?
Mm-hmm.
How is this consistent with my values? And how can I pull this off in a way that doesn't compromise my lifestyle or the things I say I want to be about? And that's integration for me. So I would say that's how I would quantify my Mumble process. And then once you integrate, you play around, you're in the middle of it, and a new idea for, iteration, a new chord progression, a new note, a new lyric, a new something pops for me in doing it. Anyway, there you go. So I just wanted to catch people up to the process we have on the iPad here.
Right. If they're not watching. And then the other half of that is ingredients. And I was sort of relating to it from, it's funny because I do relate to it in the ingredient stage as well, just as a baker. And, I was looking at one of the things I got sort of jammed up about in the beginning when we started talking about this was how little the first thing that's there for me is I haven't done this in a long time, which is not true because we're here doing it now. But that's my imposter syndrome view of life, is I don't do this. But I did when I owned the bakery. This seems the ingredients show up, obviously, because baking. And that was a process, very much a process of, okay, well, how are we gonna, I just remember thinking about, I won blue ribbons for my whole wheat challah. And that was, that was in a Mumble thing. It was like, you don't make the versions that don't turn out wrong. The versions that turn out are the lessons that allow something to show up.
Yeah.
It's, what ingredient do I need to use more of? What ingredient do I use less of? Right. Like the spaciousness, the grace that you give yourself, and but it's all inside an intention. I think also, Chris, that's a piece of this that is worth
that's good
bringing into it. It's from that space of a million ideas, in the unified field of all possible ideas. Right. You go, if you look at it from that perspective, you go into the unified field. I'm just totally making this up. You go into the unified field with an intention for something, so that, you walk out of the True North workshop and you have some idea for something. So now I'm going into the unified field and asking, okay, what does this look like? Right. From an ingredient standpoint, I was with a community of people where that arose. The thing about community is, it's interesting, Chris, because, we know that we each are the sum of the 5 people we hang out most with, that axiom that I think is valid. And I don't know if it's 5 people or whatever, but I don't need,
the point conveys.
That's you now have an environment, that's the people in the circles there. That's the environment in which you are operating. So the process that you're ideating. Yeah, baby.
That's a word.
Ideating. I fancy myself and I ideate.
I fancy myself an ideator.
the environment in which you're ideating, and playing and marinating is the community with which you find yourself,
Yeah. So,
and then that becomes, the space, and in which anything can arise, which everything is going to arise in. You're not going to come up with ideas and spaces that are inconsistent with the environment that you're in. And if you do come up with an idea that's inconsistent with the environment you're in, you're either called to follow the idea into an environment that supports it, or the idea dies.
That's good.
That's interesting. I mean,
that is
true. Is it what I just said accurate? I don't know. I mean, I literally just thought it. So,
well, it reminds me of the conversation of, your possibility lives in the conversation. Like the minute the conversation dies, the possibility dies. Like if you don't nurture the idea, so you could nurture it in a journal, but it's hard for me. The times where I tried to nurture something on my own versus nurturing it with others,
right.
Different experience for me. I had way more enjoyment in nurturing it with others.
Well, it doesn't even, for sure, enjoyment, but enjoyment doesn't begin. See, that's the integrate part now is missing. If you're just journaling it and you're not integrating it, meaning it's not happening outside of your head, or your journal. I mean, it's got to be beyond a personal phenomenon, or it doesn't really exist.
Agree. But I can look back in my life to where I had ideas about landing pages and things way back, podcasts way back, when I then on my own in my whiteboard in my journal, I'm like, this is what I want to do. So I was in the idea phase, playing with it phase, marinating phase. And then my integration was me grabbing lead pages. If you remember lead pages, which was before ClickFunnels, I grabbed lead pages and built landing pages, and I built websites and WordPress stuff. And it was me doing all this stuff on my own. And I was so miserable trying to integrate something without any sounding board or reflection from others who were on a similar path. It just
Good.
was.
But
so I was integrating.
You were integrating.
And others, I think, integrate. I think others mumble. If you're a doer, you mumble. But I think many of us doers mumble alone.
Yeah. Well,
I think there's a different experience available to mumble with others.
Completely. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's right. I don't have anything else to add to it. Well said. So then the opportunity I don't know where do we want to go? We go.
Well, I feel like if we can start to wind this down too. I feel like what we're pointing to, that there is a phase called a mumble phase. There's a thing that requires you to get out and do stuff before it's fully baked. You got to play with it. You're going to have an idea, but you got to play with it and marinate on it, integrate it, then do it again. And if you're going to, especially when it comes to changing the world, if you listening to this are a real estate, you've probably already done that with the idea of becoming an agent. You're like, I have an idea. I'm going to become an agent. And you played with that idea. You talked to your spouse or partner. You journaled about it. Then you marinated on it. You're like, should I do it? Should I not do it? And then you took the classes, and then you joined a brokerage, right? Like you already did that. But when it comes to your purpose and your true north, I think now it gets a little bit, it's not, the real estate industry is predefined. There is a on-roading map for how you become an agent, but for your purpose, it hasn't been created yet. It's yours. There is no roadmap for your purpose. It's you as Harold the Purple Crayon, and you get to draw what that is. And that is a lot more intimidating to mumble through, which is why I think this conversation is so profound, because we're looking into something that hasn't been created yet.
Well, I definitely think we have the prompt for tomorrow in that right there. I mean,
say it back to me, which is what?
Yes, good. So
Which part?
And right there for everyone, while I proceed to lose what Chris just said, want to underline what the advantages of doing this with somebody versus making lead pages yourself and seeing how it goes.
Right.
I too have gone down that road. That everyone's done this process. The people in the workshop, people in our group, in our community have done this with being a realtor. You've done this already.
Yeah.
You had the idea, you played with it how you did, all the things you just said about playing with it, marinating. I interviewed you, Chris. That's
Right. Yeah.
Really
Totally.
the seed of our relationship in this way was my interview with you as I was marinating and playing with the idea of becoming an agent.
Totally. Yeah.
Right. And then, I integrated this by becoming a realtor 10 years ago. And truthfully, I would have done it 11 years ago or maybe 12 years ago had my father-in-law not talked me out, it's not a good idea. There was at least a year lost in the people who I was talking to about it, only lost in hindsight. I mean, who knows, right? Again, the thing I did in the meantime was valuable in and of itself.
Yeah.
And then, so there is that process, but there is an on-ramp to integrating that. There is an already existing pathway to go from marinating to integration to implementation. It's no problem. I mean,
as a real estate agent,
you've got, it's there. But the idea that you have a purpose in the world, that you are now in the process of ideating, playing with, marinating with, even when you get done with that, you have no on-ramp for integrating that. There is no way, here's how you implement your purpose. So assuming, for most part, we're still in the idea play, we're in the 1, 2, 3 of just the idea itself to get the idea hammered out.
Yeah.
Right. Which could be, but then, and even then you have no path, you have no designed, preformed, prefab, existing pathway to implement your vision, which is why most people don't mess with their vision.
Yes.
Because even if they had one, what would they do with it?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And that's the purpose of the group that we have, is that, okay, we're not only are you going to get to play with that vision and develop it, you're going to develop a damn on-ramp to it, because otherwise you get to the end of your days and you begin to think, what did I just spend my life doing?
Right.
Did that matter? Did I fulfill anything that mattered to me? I mean,
right.
And most people die and they're, fulfilled with whatever they're fulfilled with, but did their life make the difference that they thought that it could make? And I'm really interested in people having agency in that.
Yeah. Right.
That's what I heard you say.
Yep. I love that. It's a great prompt too. Just the whole, the whole idea, like there is no predefined roadmap for you and your calling, you and your purpose. So this idea of mumbling with it and allowing yourself to have the idea, play with it, marinate on it, integrate it. And then to do that, this is why I love Ram Dass's quote of walking each other home, because the idea that we get to walk each other home and compare notes and talk about it insulates us from all the doubt, or maybe not all the doubt, but it insulates us quite a bit from all that snarky chatter in your head that would cause you to deviate from the thing that feels like a true north.
Yeah.
It's not practical. It's not a good idea. You'll get talking to, it's like when you have your uncle come to a home inspection and they're like, they're pretending to be the person who knows everything about a house. You're like, this is just a distraction. Like,
that's right.
Don't invite people who aren't on the road with you to give you feedback about the mumble phase of your purpose. Have that conversation with people who are also in the inquiry of their purpose.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is going to be a freaking, as the kids say these days, fire.
Fire!
This is gonna be fire.
Are you ready to mumble?
Yeah, good. Well, listen, those of you listening, I could see this series, Aaron, being, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. There's no reason to rush it. I think there's lots of inquiry here. But if you're listening to this and you want to jump into that, one, you could be a guest. So reach out to Aaron and I if you would like to be a guest before joining. But also, if you're ready to join, you can go to repurpose.group/invite. There's an application there to join the Repurpose community. And this is what we do. We mumble, baby. We mumble.
Right on.
Mumble. How's that for value proposition?
I love it. Learn how to mumble.
Good stuff. Thanks, Aaron. Let me find my stop recording button.